Jnana Yoga leads men towards perfection by changing his knowledge both in relation to himself and in relation to the world surrounding him. This is the yoga of men of the intellectual way. It liberates the human mind from the fetters of an illusory conception of the world, leads it to true knowledge, showing the fundamental laws of the universe. Jnana Yoga uses all the methods of Raja Yoga. It starts from the affirmation human mind brought up in contemplations of illusions will never solve the enigmas of life, that this demands a better instrument specially adapted for the task. Together, therefore, with the study of the principles lying at the base of things, Jnana Yoga requires the special work of the education of the mind. The mind is trained for contemplation, for concentration, for thinking in new and unaccustomed directions, and on new planes connected not with the outward aspect of things, but with their fundamental principles. And above all, the mind is trained to think quickly and exactly, always keeping in view the essential and wasting no time on external and unimportant details. Jnana Yoga starts from the fact that the chief cause of human misfortunes and disasters is avidya, ignorance. And the object of Jnana Yoga is to overcome avidya and bring man nearer to what is called Brahma Vidya, divine knowledge. The aim of Jnana Yoga is the liberation of the human mind from those limited conditions of knowledge in which it is placed by the forms of sense perception and by the logical thinking based on opposites. From the point of view of Jnana Yoga, a man first of all must learn right thinking. Right thinking and the broadening of ideas and conceptions must lead to the broadening of perception, while the broadening of perception must finally lead to a change in sensations, that is, to the abolition of all false and illusory sensations. Indian teachers, gurus, do not in the least aim at making their disciples accumulate as much miscellaneous knowledge as possible. On the contrary, they want their disciples to see in everything they study, however small it may be, the principles that lie at the basis of everything. Usually, the disciple is given for meditation either some verse from ancient scriptures or some symbol, and he meditates for a year, 2 years, possibly for 10 years, from time to time bringing to his teacher the results of his meditations. This seems strange to a Western mind, which always aims at going ever forward, but possibly it is the right method for penetrating to the root of ideas instead of acquiring a superficial acquaintance with their external side by making enormous mental collections of words and facts. In studying Jnana Yoga, man sees clearly that yoga cannot be only a method. A right method must necessarily lead to certain truths, and in expounding a method, it is impossible not to touch on these truths. Nevertheless, it must be remembered that in its nature, yoga cannot be a doctrine, and there cannot therefore be no synopsis or general outline of the ideas of Jnana Yoga. In using yoga as a method, man must himself find, feel, and realize truths which from the content of the philosophy, which form the content of the philosophy of the yogis. The same truths received in the form of a doctrine from another person or from books will not have the same effect upon the mind and soul as truths man has found for himself. Truths he has long sought for and long struggled with before accepting them. Jnana Yoga teaches that the truth for a man can only be that which he has felt as truth. Moreover, it teaches man to verify one truth by another, to ascend slowly towards the summit of knowledge, never losing sight of the point of departure and constantly returning to it in order to preserve a right orientation. Jnana Yoga teaches that the truth for a man can only be that which he has felt as truth. Moreover, it teaches man to verify one truth by another, to ascend slowly towards the summit of knowledge, never losing sight of the point of departure, and constantly returning to it in order to preserve a right orientation. Jnana Yoga teaches that the truths realized by the logical mind, educated on observation of the three-dimensional world, are not truths at all from the point of view of higher consciousness. Jnana Yoga teaches man to distrust himself, to distrust his sensations, mental images, concepts, ideas, thoughts, and words. Above all, to distrust words, to verify everything and always look around at every step, to demand that everything that has been found should accord with the testimony of experience and with fundamental principles. The ideas of Jnana Yoga have been transmitted up to now in a symbolical form only. The images of Indian gods and the figures of Indian mythology contain many ideas of Jnana Yoga, but the understanding of them requires oral explanations and commentaries. The study of Jnana Yoga from books is impossible because there exists a whole series of principles which have never been expounded in writing. Indications of these, and even some definitions of them, can be found in books, but these indications are intelligible only to those who have already received direct tuition. The difficulty of understanding these principles is especially great because it is not enough to understand them intellectually. It is necessary to learn, to apply, and use them for the division and classification not only of abstract ideas, but also the concrete things and occurrences which man meets in life. The idea of Dharma is one of its meanings in Indian philosophy. In an introduction to the study of one of these principles, which may be called the principle of relativity. The principle of relativity in the science of yogis has nothing in common with the principle of relativity in modern physics, and is studied not in its application to one class of phenomena only, but in relation to all phenomena of the universe on all planes and levels, and thus, by penetrating everything, it connects everything into one single whole. All that has gone before is a short summary of what can be learned about yoga from the existing and general accessible literature in European languages. But in order to understand rightly the meaning and significance of the different yogas, it is necessary to realize clearly that all 5 yogas, that is, each one separately, are an abbreviation and adaptation for different types of people of one and the same general system. This system is taught orally in particular schools which differ from the yoga schools as much as yoga schools differ from monasteries. This system has no name and has never been made public. Allusions to it are only rarely met with in Eastern writings, but much of what has been ascribed to yoga belongs in reality to this system. At the same time, the system cannot be regarded simply as a combination of the 5 yogas. All the yogas have originated from this system. Each of the yogas, in a sense, a one-sided understanding of it. One is wider, another is narrower, but all of them expound one and the same system. The combination of all 5 yogas does not reconstruct it because it contains many ideas, principles, and methods which do not enter into any of the yogas. Fragments of the system, so far as the author has succeeded in becoming acquainted with them, we set forth in the book Man and the World in Which He Lives, fragments of an unknown teaching which is being prepared for publication.